Hey guys, Mosa here, and today I'm bringing you my Week 9 NFL Power Rankings. Now, without a further ado, let's get started. Now, starting off with the Carolina Panthers at 32, we got the 1-7 Panthers, just took an L from the Denver Broncos, and will now take on the New Orleans Saints at home. Now, the Panthers just traded away a wide receiver, which I believe might be either the second or first wide receiver. It's still up in the air, but around there, and that was Johnson, I think. Deontay Johnson, I think it was. I'm not really certain about the name right now, but the former Steeler, then Panther, now gets traded to Baltimore. So Panthers, obviously, they're not going for Super Bowl. They're just trying to make sure that they can then build the team later in the future for either Bryce Young, or if they decide to go with another quarterback, well, you know. The point is, the Panthers, there's no way that they're going to make it anywhere close to the playoffs. They would need a miracle, like, the rest of the season to even get close to a chance at the playoffs. So, in my opinion, the Panthers are going to remain 32 until further notice. Now, moving on to the Tennessee Titans at 1-6. Just took an L, a big one, to the Detroit Lions in Detroit, and now will be at home against the Patriots. I'm going to tell you this straight up. The Titans are just not good. And obviously, seeing, of course, Will Levis playing this game in the previous week, yeah, this is going to be... Sorry, not Will Levis. Mason Rudolph it was. That's who it was. But in the end, the Titans, they're just not good at all. And just like Panthers, well, at least a little better than the Panthers. But they are most likely going to be building a team for their new quarterback, because I don't think that Will Levis will remain the quarterback in Tennessee. I think he'll most likely leave Tennessee at one point after his rookie contract's over. So, yeah, I'm thinking right now that the Tennessee Titans most likely will draft a new quarterback and build the team around them. Now, moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-6. Took an L from the Kansas City Chiefs and will be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. Now, when it comes to the Raiders, most likely we're going to be seeing Antonio Pierce, the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, being fired at the end of the season. I think he's on the hot seat right now, and there is no way that if he does not make the playoffs with this Raiders team, there is no way that he keeps his job. Because in the end, last year, he was a very good head coach, an interim head coach, and I think that they were like, okay, we're not going to do the same thing that we did with Rip Bisaccia, which was the other interim head coach before they got Josh McDaniels. And they were like, we're not going to get rid of this guy. That was a big mistake. Yeah, it was a good idea, but a big mistake. So, yeah, I'm thinking that right now the Raiders, they're just not good at the moment, and they won't be playoff team. They most likely will get to 8-7 wins, most likely. But as far as I can see, the Antonio Pierce Raiders, they're just not going to make it into the 2024 NFL playoffs. Now, moving on to the 2-5, Miami Dolphins just took an L from the Arizona Cardinals and will take on the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Now, we had the return of Tua, and just like I said, he was not ready. Obviously, he did a very decent job and honestly, he could have potentially won that game, yes. But I thought that no, this team is not ready for the return of Tua, and it's proved by the Cardinals being able to beat them. So, yeah, I'm thinking right now that the game against Buffalo is going to be a little bit tougher, especially because it's a division rival, and one that literally rivals the Kansas City Chiefs. So, for right now, I'm thinking that the Dolphins most likely lose that game, but you never know. Tua could actually be better by the time of Week 9's game against the Bills, rather than how he was against the Cardinals this last Sunday. Now on to the New York Giants at 2-6, and just took an L from the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday Night Football, and will take on the Washington Commanders in MetLife. Now, when it comes down to the New York Giants, obviously, dumpster fire. So, Yeah, and it's the same thing for the Jets, but I'll talk about the Jets a little later. But the point is, the New York Giants, they honestly had an opportunity to beat the Steelers on Monday night. I thought that honestly that game could have been a trap game. In my mind, always came to me, could this be a trap game? Could Russell Wilson lose that game? Well, sure as hell, he did not. So, in the end, the Washington Commanders are going to be a tougher team to beat, honestly. But, I mean, the New York Giants, am I trusting Daniel Jones? Do I want Drew Lock in there or even Tommy DeVito? Like, what do I want at quarterback for the Giants? Well, in the end, the Giants aren't making the playoffs either. So, yeah, none of the bottom five teams are probably making the playoffs, and the Giants are no exception. Now, up next, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars at 2-6, just took an L from the Packers, and will be going into Philly to take on the Eagles. Now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously, like the Trevor Lawrence Jaguars, it's mostly, I'm going to put it much on Trevor, obviously, but like the first year, obviously, Trevor was exempt from what happened that year due to his head coach. But what's his excuse now? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But I'm also going into the fact that I don't think that we should really blame that much. I think that soon enough, like, yeah, Trevor is a good quarterback, by the way. There's no doubt in my mind about that. It's just that the Jacksonville Jaguars are not performing because they don't have the team to perform. And if you don't have a team that can perform, how do you expect your quarterback to lead you to playoffs? Because guess what? The team is not only the quarterback. You have to build the team. Otherwise, the team goes to shambles. Now, on to the New Orleans Saints. 2-6, took an L from the Chargers, and are taking on the Panthers in Charlotte. Now, when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, I think that they're not doing pretty well. Obviously, 2-0, and then 6 straight weeks of losses. I'm just saying this team is not ready for the playoffs. This team was a fluke those two first games. Obviously, you had the Panthers week 1, and then week 2, the Cowboys. So, obviously, those games were flukes. They were, honestly, pretenders. And I don't really think much of Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, and even Jake Hayner at quarterback. Whoever one of those starts, not going to help. And when it comes to obviously the run game with Kamara, and not really that big of, it's not that big for me. Like, I don't see Kamara as that guy anymore. Realistically, the only guy on that offense that I really trust is Chris Olave. And that's giving it a stretch because, honestly, I don't think that New Orleans Saints offense is good at all right now. The only bright spot being Chris Olave. While the defense is trying their best, but failing, honestly, the worst, not the worst, but one of the worst defenses in the National Football League. Now, moving on to the New York Jets, and them at 2-6, took an L from the Patriots of all teams, and will take on the Texans on Thursday Night Football. I'm going to be straight up honest. This team is not going to survive. There is absolutely nothing they can do to save their season. I think that they are, I'm going to say it, screwed in the 2024 season. And honestly, this is all Aaron Rodgers' fault. Because if he truly has the control over, for example, the firing of Robert Saleh and all that, then yeah, it's his fault. Man, just first of all, you had the best head coach for your defense that you've ever had in potentially decades. And potentially better than, obviously, I forgot his name, but the one from 2012 with Mark Sanchez at the quarterback position. But that's beside the point. The point is, the Jets, they're just not performing. Aaron Rodgers is not doing enough to win. And obviously, zero catches from Devontae Adams against Christian Gonzalez. Are you kidding me? You traded this guy and this is what happens? Numbe. This is a horrible team, and honestly, Aaron Rodgers is mostly to blame now. Now, moving on to the New England Patriots. The Patriots, 2-6, took down the Jets and are going to face the Titans in Nashville. Now, when it comes to the New England Patriots, it comes down to first how Drake May is going to perform against the Titans, which I believe is going to be good. And he's been doing good, by the way, as a starter. And obviously got his first win as a starter. But I think, and honestly, this is just my thought. Could Drake May end up potentially getting the team almost close to a playoff berth? That is a big question I have because, for example, I obviously know the Patriots aren't good, but what if that suddenly happens? But we're going to start talking about what ifs and honestly go with the facts. And the fact is the Patriots are right now one of the worst teams in the National Football League. And even though they beat the Jets, it's still just the Jets. So, yeah, I'm thinking that the Patriots, even though they're better than the Jets, they're still in the bottom of the league. Now, on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 4-4. Took, an L. Sorry, but you took an L to the Falcons and will face off against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Now, when it comes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, honestly, this team is going to be it's just going to be so sorry for them because, to be honest, this team could have beaten the Falcons in that game on Sunday. I believe so. It was honestly a terrible game defensively, obviously, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just came off a loss, and then this happens. Talking about the Falcons, by the way. And then they just come here to Tampa and beat you guys. That is honestly horrible. But in the end, it's still not over. Obviously, they're 4-4. They're still fighting for that division lead with the Falcons. But in the end, it comes down to, first of all, whoever wins that division is going to get knocked out in the first round. But besides that, honestly, the Bucs, they're far from being eliminated. Now, on to the Washington Commanders, who just took a win from the Chicago Bears and will take on the Giants in MetLife. Now, the 6-2, yes, you heard me right, a 6-2 team is ranked 22nd. Now, why do I have them ranked so low? Well, that's because even though they're 6-2, I'm still not trusting the Commanders. I think they're bottom feeding team because, to be honest, I think they've just been lucky. They're going to win against the Giants, no doubt in my mind. But it's still just luck, in my opinion. Like, they're just getting lucky that, one, they are winning, and that the Eagles and Cowboys just went into the dumpster. And honestly, the Washington Commanders also had an injury to their quarterback, Jaden Daniels. So that's also bad. And I think that happened like against Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken. But still, even so, an injury lingers. And it lingered, for example, on RG3 when he got hurt in 2012. And then, you know what happened in the playoffs against Seattle. And I just hope that doesn't happen to Jaden, because honestly, Jaden is almost set to win Rookie of the Year. Now, up next, we got the Dallas Cowboys at 3-4, took an L from the 49ers, and will take on the Falcons in Atlanta. And when it comes to the Cowboys, yeah, they're not doing good at all. The 49ers was a given, and honestly, the Falcons might also be a given. But it all comes really down to their run game. First of all, you got an injury to Rico Dowell, and then you got to think. Ezekiel Elliott and Dalvin Cook, they're not the guys that they used to be. It's not the Cowboys version of Ezekiel Elliott back when he was a rookie, and it's not the Dalvin Cook we saw in Minnesota. So we are seeing two different running backs that are just not performing the way they should. Rico Dowell has been pretty good, and yeah, the Cowboys offense, honestly, they need to do better. And it's all thanks to Jerry Jones on how he built this team this year. And yeah, he just didn't work on anything. He only signed like Eric Hendricks, if I'm not Eric Hendricks in this offseason, and that's it. That's the only thing I think he did other than the draft. And due to that, I think that they failed massively, and it's proving here in the 2024 season. Now, up next, we got the Denver Broncos, 5-3, took down the Panthers, and will take on the Ravens at home. Well, not at home, actually. It's in Baltimore. Sorry, my mistake. But in the end, when it comes down to it, the Broncos led by Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been doing pretty well. I'm not going to lie. He started off a little rough, and now he's up to a 5-3 record. So I'm thinking that Denver is going to have a very good time against the Baltimore Ravens, and we're going to be seeing a very good game, both from the side of, hey, this is a pretty good guy at quarterback, and he's a rookie, and Lamar Jackson. So in the end, it all comes down to how Bo Nix is going to perform against the Baltimore Ravens defense with Marshawn Lattimore, Roquan Smith, and all those other guys there. So we're going to be seeing a very good game between the Broncos offense and the Baltimore defense. Now, moving on to the Chicago Bears at 4-3, just took a L from the Washington Commanders. And then we see them going up against the Cardinals in Arizona. Now, when it comes down to the Chicago Bears, I'm thinking, honestly, it's pretty tough to say. Because sometimes you see a very good performance or a very decent performance from Caleb Williams, and sometimes you don't see that at all. And sometimes you see DeAndre Swift doing a pretty decent job to then doing nothing. So I'm like a bit iffy on that offense. It has been a very good defense, but obviously not good enough to, as they just lost to the Commanders, obviously. But in the end, it comes down to one, the defense, and two, is Caleb Williams really the guy in Chicago? Now, up next, we got the Los Angeles Rams at 3-4. They just took a win from the Minnesota Vikings and will take on the Seahawks in Seattle. Now, this team, it's okay. It's been okay for a team like the Los Angeles Rams. But they're in the same boot as Seattle, in my opinion. So I'm thinking that, yeah, first of all, Matthew Stafford, definitely degrading, at least as a quarterback. And when it comes to the offense, obviously the loss of Cooper Kupp is missed. Puka Nacua and all those other guys as well, very much missed. The defense not doing as they should, but they managed to squeak out a win against the Minnesota Vikings, so I can't really say that much about that offense and defense. But in the end, it still comes down to, are they going to do the same in Seattle, or are they going to choke? Now, up next, we got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday night. At 4-4, they just took an L from the Texans, which was a given, and most likely a win against the Vikings is not going to happen. But honestly, the benching of Anthony Richardson might do them good. So that might be a good thing for the Indianapolis Colts. So they might get a win if Joe Flacco's playing, but you never know. In the end, I'm thinking that the Indianapolis Colts, they're just not working as they should. Obviously, like I've said, the Anthony Richardson-led Indianapolis Colts are never going to win a game, at least this season. But Joe Flacco's been doing so well that I was like, just put him as a starter. Because guess what? He's getting you games. He's getting you wins. Put him. And then worry about your other quarterback when the time comes. Now, moving on to the Los Angeles Chargers, 4-3. Took a win from the New Orleans Saints and will take on Cleveland. The Deshaun Watson-less Cleveland Browns. And honestly, the Chargers, they're doing decently, but they're not doing good enough. That's not enough to win a playoff game. And I'm not expecting them to do so. I'm expecting them to choke not only in a playoff game this year, but in this very game. I saw what Cleveland did, and guess what? I loved it. I loved the Jameis Winston-led Cleveland Browns better than the Deshaun Watson-led Cleveland Browns. So honestly, I'm just gonna be like, hey, the Chargers they're just not gonna be in it because I think that defense is actually going to stop Justin Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers, although they do have Jim Harbaugh as a head coach, so you never know. Now, on to the Arizona Cardinals at 4-4, took a win from the Dolphins and will take on the Bears at home. Now, when it comes to the Cardinals, they have been doing a very decent job. They are 4-4. They're tied with Seattle, and honestly, they honestly, in my opinion, weren't in the same boot as Seattle. But after the this season and going up to 4-4, they are most likely in the same boot or ahead of the Seahawks. Obviously, not division record wise. They're the same record, and obviously, they're gonna be going up head-to-head matchup. But that's beside the point. The point is, in my opinion, they're honestly the Rams and the Seahawks all in the same boot, and it's just San Francisco's division. Although San Francisco's also not doing too well either compared to these two teams because they all got the same record. Yes, you heard me right. 4-4 for all three teams. The only exception being the Rams, who have played only 7 games. But besides that, the Arizona Cardinals, led by Kyler Murray, and honestly, they're going to be doing some pretty decent things against the Chicago Bears. Now, moving on to the Cleveland Browns, 2-6, took a win from Baltimore, and now will take on the Chargers in LA. I'm going to be honest, the Cleveland Browns, Cleveland, I'm going to be honest with you. You are on a rise now because ever since you decided to, well, not that you decided, you were forced, but you decided to start Jameis Winston over DTR, obviously. But also, the injury to Deshaun Watson was basically a gift from the gods for the Cleveland Browns. Because honestly, it was that contract why Deshaun Watson was still playing, and he was a horrible quarterback. Honestly, he's not the same quarterback he was in Houston. That's the thing. But now you switch up a quarterback, and look what happens. You'll win against the Baltimore Ravens in a very good game. So I'm expecting a similar thing to happen, or potentially a loss, you never know, against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, up next, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at 3-5. They just took an L from the Eagles in a devastating loss, and now will take on the Raiders in Las Vegas. Well, at home, sorry. I meant at home. But in the end, it's honestly a travesty for Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be losing a few of his guys as well this offseason. So it's going to turn even tougher for 2025, but that's beside the point. The point is, this season, they've just not been performing. And it started out that very game, week 1 against the Patriots, where they took an L from the Patriots. So, and by the way, 2 losses for the Patriots, and one of them was against Cincinnati. Honestly, the Bengals should be the opposite way around. They should be 5-3 or higher. But no, this year, they're just not performing as well as they should, and that's why they are 3-5 and probably going to beat the Raiders, but it's honestly not a given. And now we move on to my Seattle Seahawks. 4-4, took a massive L from the Buffalo Bills, 31-10, and will take on the Rams at home. I'm going to be honest, I did not expect to beat the Buffalo Bills. I definitely did not, but I did not expect it to be so bad. So, yeah, that happened. But besides that, we're going to go up against the Rams, who I expect to win. But to be honest, it's honestly a toss-up with Seattle when it comes down to it. And I'm thinking that there's a potential chance for the Seattle Seahawks to, if they make the playoffs, it's probably as a 7th seed because I don't see them winning the division. The same goes for the Cardinals. I think it's going to be San Francisco. And honestly, Seattle, Geno Smith's pretty good. But I hope that if Seattle can draft a quarterback this year, whether it be in the first round, second, whatever, you need to draft a quarterback this season, this upcoming draft in 2025, because honestly, you need to start preparing for the future. And I'm thinking have the current quarterback, Geno Smith, as either or you never know. Maybe you'll get Sam Howell as your quarterback in the future, but you never know. But the point is, make him the veteran quarterback to teach the rookie so that in the future you have another Russell Wilson that wins you another Super Bowl. Now we have the Atlanta Falcons, and the Falcons, honestly, taking a win from the Buccaneers and will take on the Cowboys after starting 5-3. I'm gonna be honest. I did not expect this from Atlanta. I expect them to do okay, but not this. They're leading the division. They're doing pretty well. Darnell Mooney, Drake London, and guess what? That was because Arthur Smith is not the head coach anymore. And obviously, we know that Kirk Cousins is the quarterback, but he's not the future. Although, I'm not going to put it past them to potentially, even potentially, I'm not going to say this like full straight up, but maybe we're going to be seeing a very good team led by Michael Penix Jr. in either 2025 or 2026 that makes it to as far as the NFC Championship game. But for right now, Kirk Cousins is leading this team to the playoffs. Now we enter the top 10 with the Minnesota Vikings after taking an L from the LA Rams. 5-2. They are going up against the Colts on Sunday night, which most likely they'll win, but you never know. In the end, honestly, it's been a downturn for Sam Darnold, obviously. It went from being, hey, we start out 5-0 to, hey, we lost 2 straight games against the Lions, which was okay. It's the Lions, so it's okay. But then you lose against the Rams, and you're like, what's wrong, Minnesota? What's wrong? But I think that might be changing this week on Sunday Night Football as the Colts most likely lose to the Vikings. But I'm going to be honest, the Sam Darnold-led Vikings, if this season goes well for Sam, he will either be a starter in a team that needs a quarterback quick, or he'll be a backup and a reliable one at that. Now up next, we got the San Francisco 49ers, 4-4, took down the Cowboys and will be on their bye week. So this is honestly, a very needed rest for the 49ers. And realistically, I'm going to be honest, the San Francisco 49ers are doing pretty decently. So hopefully for 49ers fans, Seattle doesn't win this week, because if they do, they'll be ahead in the division. And if the San Francisco 49ers see a loss, at least that will make it easier for them to keep the lead, obviously. But some much needed rest, and they'll be getting ready for their next game in week 10. After that, we move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, 6-2, took down the Giants on Monday night and will be entering their bye just like the 49ers. Now, Steelers, phenomenal. Obviously, injury to the quarterback, Justin Fields. He was made the third string emergency quarterback, and obviously Kyle Allen was the backup to Russell Wilson. But it looks like Russell Wilson still did his job, still did good, and led the Steelers to a win over the Giants, and will get some much needed rest in week 9 for their week 10 matchup. Now moving on to the Houston Texans. And the Texans, 6-2, took down the Colts and will take on the Jets. I'm going to be honest, this team it's honestly up and down for me. But against good teams. Otherwise, teams like a Jet, honestly, are we going to really say they're going to lose to the Jets, CJ Stroud, and the Texans, and now watch them win on Thursday Night Football for and give the Houston Texans a 6-3 record? Honestly, that would be hilarious. But besides that, the point is, I'm thinking that the Texans, led by CJ Stroud, most likely make the playoffs, division title, and potentially second seed. But I'm going to be honest, they might not be able to make it to the Super Bowl this year either. And I think they might choke it in the playoffs, but still, pretty good team. Now on to the Philadelphia Eagles, 5-2, taking on the Jaguars at home, by the way. And they just beat the Bengals in Cincinnati. Now, when it comes to the 5-2 Eagles, they are doing pretty decently, but still behind the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders are still beating the Eagles in that division. And to be honest, forget about the Cowboys. It's the Eagles and Commanders for that division. And I'm thinking that somehow, some way, the Eagles are going to get that division lead back, or at least get it, because obviously, I don't think the entire year they've been actually leading in the division at all. I think it was New York, or no, not New York, Washington, who has done it. But besides that, the Eagles, they're a pretty good team under Jalen Hurts. Obviously, they got AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and all those other guys. So honestly, I'm thinking that this team's going to do good against the Jacksonville Jaguars and make sure that we're going to be seeing another uh, big score like we saw them do against Cincinnati last week. Now, entering the top five, we got the Baltimore Ravens. They just took an L from the Cleveland Browns. Will take on the Broncos. And honestly, I'm going to be honest. The Baltimore Ravens, they might be on a downturn because two straight losses against the Browns and Broncos. I forgot if they lost the previous week before that, but that's beside the point. Point is, a loss against Denver might actually be like alarm bells going off in Baltimore. Like, hey, are we really this good of a team? Or are we just honestly going down the trash chute? But in my opinion, Baltimore's still a pretty good team. And honestly, rivaling the Steelers for that division title, although they are leading the division. I'm talking about Pittsburgh, by the way. But besides that, I think that we're most likely going to see a Baltimore Pittsburgh playoff matchup in the wild card or even the divisional round or even AFC championship, depending on what happens. Because guess what? That's what I believe will happen because these two matchups or teams, sorry, are honestly doing pretty well and most likely will both make the playoffs. Now we move on to the Buffalo Bills, 6-2, and destroyed my Seattle Seahawks, and will take on the rival Dolphins at home. I'm gonna be honest, this team is pretty good. It is. There's no doubt. But honestly, Buffalo could actually be an AFC contender for the AFC title game. Them, the Ravens, the Chiefs, those are the three teams I'm expecting to rival for that top seed and potentially going to the AFC title game. Because to be honest, I'm going to be very, very, very honest. These are the top three teams, in my opinion, in the AFC. Because, I mean, have you seen the Bills? Have you seen the Chiefs? And although the Chiefs aren't doing that well with Patrick Mahomes having more interceptions than touchdowns, it's still doing pretty well. So I'll move on to the Chiefs when I get to the Chiefs. Besides that, the Bills going up against the Dolphins, there is no doubt in my mind that the Bills will win. Now we enter the top three with the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers, after beating the Jaguars in Jacksonville at 6-2, will take on the Detroit Lions. This is a matchup for the division. We will be seeing whether Jordan Love leads the Packers to a division lead at 7-2, or if they'll be behind 6-3 to the 7-1 Detroit Lions. I'm gonna be honest. This is gonna be a fun game to watch. Detroit versus Green Bay in Green Bay, Lambeau Field. We're gonna be seeing a very, very good game, and I can't wait to watch these two just go at it. Because honestly, these are the top two teams in the NFC, and there's no doubt in my mind that the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers will most likely make the playoffs and potentially maybe even see each other in the playoffs. Now we move on to the Detroit Lions at number 2. They are facing off against the Packers in Lambeau Field at 6-1, and they just came off a vicious win over the Tennessee Titans, 52-14. This team is rocking. Only one loss on the year. And they also took an L. Sorry, not an L. A win against the Minnesota Vikings, giving them their first loss of the year. That is insane. And guess what? I'm loving every second of it because this team went from being trash back in 2022, I think it was 2022, and in 2023, playoff contender. And this year, playoff contender. I'm going to be honest. This team is exciting. And honestly, if you're a Detroit Lion fan, if you're in Detroit, this team is rocking. And this team might even make it to their first Super Bowl this very season. Although they are number one, I am hesitant to put them number one, but I have to because they are the only undefeated team. 7-0. We got the Kansas City Chiefs. They're taking on the Bucks on Monday Night Football, and they just took a big win. Well, not a big win. It's a close win against the Raiders. I honestly thought it was going to be sort of like what happened on Christmas last year, where the Raiders beat them, but this was close enough. And Patrick Mahomes not doing too good. Travis Kelce not doing too good. Honestly, and they're getting also, by the way, Kareem Hunt on the team as the starting running back. And then you get receivers like DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to Kansas City. This team, this very team, is going to be a playoff contender no matter what. They will be most likely the number 1 or number 2 seed, depending. And they will likely might be the first team, not the first to make it back to the Super Bowl 3 consecutive times. That's still the Buffalo Bills. And they actually made it 4 consecutive times. But this team might actually have the opportunity to not only make the Super Bowl 3 times, but win it 3 consecutive times. And that is something never seen in NFL history, and the Kansas City Chiefs might do it this year. Now, that was it for this video. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. Who should be higher and who should be lower? And do you like where I ranked your team? Tell me down in the comments below. Now, like this video if you liked it, subscribe, and hit the notification if you want more videos. And I'll see you guys next time.